All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Matthias Verhaes. I'm the founder and curator of Domain-Driven Design Europe. And in past years, I've often invited people who submitted sessions to have a short conversation on Zoom. But I ended up having like, I think between 75 and 100 of those meetings and often saying the same things. So this is an experiment to give you an opportunity to chat and ask questions. So yeah, I guess you all know something about the conference already. It's in Amsterdam in June. We have some things that are somewhat different than most conferences. So it actually consists of 4 different things. There's the main conference, which is Domain-Driven Design Europe, or sometimes we just call it main conference. And that's like the main event, of course, where what we're trying there is to really make it about software design. So the sort of invisible design, right? Not visual design, but what the software works like and looks like on the inside, and domain modeling. And of course, domain-driven design in general, but we tend to look a bit broader than that. But we're always looking for content that is very much focused on this, right? On design, on modeling. There's stuff that is sort of close to that, like architecture is in there as well. And sometimes, it can go all kinds of directions, right? It can be programming, it can be architecture, could be the relationship between design and team organization is something that has come up a lot. But it's always easier for me to find stuff that is sort of adjacent to software modeling and design, as opposed to being about software modeling and design. So if you want to increase your chances, if you can get to the heart of it, to the core of that, that would be, that would help. Not to say that we don't accept other stuff as well, and we've gone all kinds of places, right? We've done science and philosophy and psychology and sociology and all kinds of topics where we feel that somehow they can help us, become better designers, or just sort of like I don't know the word in English, like cross-pollination. That's probably the one I'm looking for, where different disciplines, or maybe engineering in an entirely different space, could teach us something. So we had somebody from NASA talk about landing stuff on Mars a few years ago. But that's the main event. That's the 2 days at the end of the week. The other thing that is sort of different there is that it's not just presentations. We have typical 50-minute presentations, but we also put a lot of focus on what we call hands-on labs. So these labs are 2-hour sessions typically, where of course there can be some explanation or some theory or whatever, but the goal, as the name suggests, is for it to be very hands-on. So typically you would have maybe 20, 30, 40 or more is also possible, people in your session. You get to decide how many is too many, right? But basically the goal there is to make it very interactive, to have people collaborate on exercises. Could be modeling, could be code, could be something else, visualizations of stuff, katas, architecture katas, that sort of thing. We've had some, very interesting stuff there. But like the general idea there is people get to experience something. Maybe they've heard of, I don't know, let's say event storming, right? They've heard of it. They have some idea that maybe they should try it, but they don't know if it's for them. It's maybe too soon for them to really invest in, should I go take a course somewhere or read a book, but this is like a 2-hour thing where worst case, you lost 2 hours. Best case, you figured out, okay, this is actually, something valuable that I should try. You're not going to be an expert, of course. but you get a feel for it. That's sort of the idea. And even if you decide that it's not for you, that might actually be valuable, right? If you end up deciding, okay, now I know what it is. This is not what I was looking for. Even that provides some value to the participants, I think. So that's sort of the main idea for the main conference. Then the day before, we have 2 sub-conferences that are happening simultaneously. One is called DDD Foundations. And so the main conference is trying to sort of expand what is DDD, what is software design, where do we go with this, what other ideas exist out there, how can we grow and improve. And it's aiming mostly at people who are already in this community, who are already, maybe not necessarily in the DDD community, but who have been, who has spent time thinking and studying software design and modeling in general. Whereas DDD Foundations is really sort of a more pure DDD conference. As the name suggests, right? What we've done in previous years is to have a number of sessions that each highlight one topic that is sort of central to DDD. One way I've explained this is that it's topics or ideas that are broadly accepted within the DDD community, right? It's stuff that you would easily, probably learn elsewhere as well, but it's sort of all in one place, and you get sort of a day of different ideas there. That's what we've done in the past, but we're going to try something different this time. It's still, the main idea is still the same type of audience, right? It's people who are new to DDD or who have studied some of it, but don't feel very advanced or expert, or don't feel like they are really part of this movement yet, or they are trying to, maybe they actually are, but they're trying to scale it. They are trying to scale it within their organization, and they need maybe ways of explaining things, right? That audience is still the same. That's still the main target for this, for the DDD Foundations. But what we're going to try to do is have only live coding sessions. Next week, we have another meetup like this to discuss more in detail, like how you can do that and what kind of ideas work. And to give you some inspiration and to help you feel why it's not as scary as you might think. But the reasoning is that by doing that, we often get the criticism that DDD or the DDD Europe conference specifically are not very practical. I disagree, but the reason people say that is because often programmers, especially if they're fairly new, they're maybe not as well versed in thinking abstractly about code and architecture and structure, etc. So we want to make it very sort of visible and very tangible. Like, what does working with DDD day to day look like, right? What kind of decisions do you make while programming? What kind of, and of course, there's a lot of stuff that happens outside of programming, but the idea is that with these live coding sessions, you would see the speaker do this and reason out loud, like, okay, here, it seems I'm missing this information. I should go talk to a domain expert, which of course in this live coding session, you're not actually doing, or you can simulate that and say, well, I talked to the domain expert and they said this or that, and now I'm incorporating that in code. But it's sort of the reasoning. That's what I want to see. And I think that live coding is like the perfect vehicle for this sort of thing. I noticed doing it and seeing other people do it, that during live coding, you're really, as an audience member, you're much more engaged. You're not sort of reading code, but you're thinking along. It's almost like a huge ensemble programming session. And I've done this on stage where even without preparation, I took over a few months ago. I took over for a speaker who fell ill, and I improvised a live coding session. I had a problem that I knew I could solve. I had already solved this before, and I solved it while explaining it to the audience. And the audience was, they were sort of shouting suggestions sometimes, or especially if I made a mistake, you know, I didn't see right away what I did wrong, but people in the audience started saying, "Oh, you forgot this thing or that thing." So they are much more sort of, and the nice thing is they see that they want you to succeed, right? They want you to get to the finish line. They want to see how it ends. It's much more like a, yeah, like a live performance than a typical presentation, right? So I think this will be a way where we can really capture the audience, drive them, bring them along with us on this ride. Like, okay, how are we solving this? You know, what sort of you could, and you discuss what you're doing, right? So what sort of heuristics am I using here? Why would I decide this? Or in what circumstances would I do this differently? And then the sort of thing you do could be, you know, could be making a domain model. It could be writing tests. It could be refactoring something. You know, whatever you come up with, right? Ideally, of course, connected to domain-driven design. But let's just call it defensively close enough to domain-driven design as sort of the goal here. So that's the idea for DDD Foundations. I don't know if that will succeed in the sense that, are we going to get enough submissions that fit this? But that's what we're trying to achieve here. So I hope you will consider this format. If you do, or if you worry about that it's too scary or too risky, there's ways to deal with that. We can discuss that next week. It doesn't have to be 100% live, right? You can use macros, you can copy paste stuff, you can prepare boilerplate code in advance, but make sure that the audience is sort of, you know, seeing it happen in real time, the real work, the real problem solving, the real thinking. So that's the second thing. The third thing is also on the Wednesday, the Event Sourcing Live conference. This sub-conference was created because we, well, event sourcing sort of came out of the DDD community, of course, is still sort of closely connected. We had a lot of event sourcing talks at DDD Europe, but I felt that, you know, this sort of growing community deserved more. We also have a separate meetup like this about that in 2 weeks, I think, which Oscar will be curating that program. Maybe wave, Oscar, so they see who you are. Yeah. So we'll discuss that in 2 weeks. But there, I think, you know, very much it's expanding on event sourcing. It's not just sort of introductions for beginners, but it's you know, what exists, what patterns, what technologies, what alternative solutions, you know, what how do you deal with specific problems like scaling or complexity or evolution or legacy or these kind of things. You know, it could be related topics like distributed systems and architecture and this sort of thing, messaging, databases. That's the short of it. And that will be more like a normal conference, I guess, with you know, 50-minute talks, maybe some hands-ons, but it's mostly a normal traditional tech conference, I guess. And then we have the pre-conference workshops. So we have, typically they are 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days. Occasionally we've done half-day workshops as well. But there it's much more, so if the hands-on labs on Thursday and Friday are sort of samples for people who haven't decided yet that they want to adopt this ID or this method, the pre-conference workshops are very much for, you know, people who have already decided to invest in this. It's also financially more of an investment, of course. They need to buy separate tickets for that. So they're much more, you know, advanced, in-depth. You should learn stuff there that you can pretty much literally start using on Monday the next week. It should be taught by people who are, either the inventor of that or very experienced in that ID. Whereas the hands-on labs, it can be, you don't have to have invented event storming to teach it or to run a lab about it. For the workshops, you're much more expected to have demonstrable experience doing it in many cases. And I'm saying event storming, but it could be all kinds of things, of course. Often it's various methods or techniques. Could be tech related, but we're less like, so in general, right, we have for most of these things, we're not, it shouldn't be focused on a single technology or a single product, right? So if you use, for example, a programming language to demonstrate certain IDs, that's perfectly fine. But the goal typically should be that people who don't know that programming language should still get value from this, right? So in general, like, people use more of the well-known popular languages so that it's easier for others to understand it. Of course, if you're specifically doing, let's say, actor model with DDD, you're going to use maybe a less popular language, but still it should be about the principles of actor model, not about Erlang or Akka or some specific technology. We make exceptions if there's sort of a good reason for that. And for the event sourcing live also, we're more likely to make exceptions because it's much more of a tech conference than the rest of DDD Europe, which is a software design conference. But we've had, for the pre-conference workshops, we've had, stuff like data mesh, which is also very DDD adjacent. What else? Well, as I said, various techniques, value stream mapping, things that can help you with software design, architecture, a lot of modeling workshops, of course, that sort of thing. I think this is like the gist of it. So I think we can, I'm trying to think if I forgot something very important. Yeah, so maybe submission process. There's I suspect you've seen the CFP page. We're adding some more information about event sourcing live there as well soon. So you start there, make sure you've read that. You just submit your stuff in Sessionize, which is the tool we're using. And you can even stuff that is, if you're not entirely sure yet what it should be like, or you can also submit that as a rough ID, and we'll consider it. But of course, the more explanation you have, that sort of shows us what is it going to be like, what will people learn. There's a field for private comments, right, that we don't publish. So what can people learn? What can, what value will this bring to them? What experience do they need to have? That sort of stuff is all very helpful. Why you're the one to explain that. And also maybe a tip. People tend to write abstracts that are teasers. And they say, I'm going to teach you the 3 main secrets of DDD or something like that. That's fine if you want to do that format, that's not a problem. But I feel like if you're trying to tease something, that makes it harder for the audience and for us to evaluate what it's really going to be about. If you say it's going to be 3 secrets and you're not saying what they are, then the audience might be very disappointed that it's 3 secrets they already knew for a long time. If your talk hinges on, if spoiling it in the abstract would ruin your talk, that's probably a sign that your talk hasn't enough meat to it anyway, right? So don't be afraid to say really what your talk is about and what the thing is. that really makes it better, right? It's not a trailer for a movie where you don't want to spoil the ending. It's perfectly fine to explain the ending and then use the talk to explain why that is, you know, a good idea, as a general advice. But so then basically your talk gets in our, last time we had, I think 350-ish submissions. So obviously not everything gets accepted. And we don't provide feedback on everything because it's just too much. So, you know, a rejection doesn't necessarily mean that it's not good or not valuable or whatever, but if we have 3 submissions about data mesh, we're probably going to accept 1. And if one of them is by the creator of data mesh, we're probably going to accept that one, right? So there's reasons why your thing might not be accepted, even though it's, you know, intrinsically valuable. But what we do, as I mentioned, often we contact people based on their submissions to have a short chat on Zoom. And often it's sort of, you know, an opportunity for you to explain a bit more what it's about, or for us to ask questions. We're also a bit more involved in this stuff than most conferences I've spoken at least. For example, we might suggest ideas or changes, or what we've done often, and we want to do more of that because it works really well, is to pair you up with another speaker who volunteers for this and who can support you in like being a soundboard or helping you, you know, work on your material and get feedback and discuss it. So I invite you to also volunteer to do this. The minimum commitment for that is 1 hour, basically, that you will, you know, meet with another speaker, discuss their topic. If you want to do more, that's appreciated, of course, but that's the commitment. On top of that, another experiment we're doing is Dan and Mike. I think I see Mike here. Can you wave? Dan and Mike are experts in helping people design workshops and sessions, even if they don't know the topic very well, but to sort of think about, especially for hands-on labs, I guess, you know, interaction styles and techniques and facilitation methods. I hope I'm saying this all right, Mike. So what we're planning to do is set up a few sessions where you know, they will share ideas, and so I think it's 3 sessions of, I think the current plan was 3 sessions of 1.5 hours or 1 hour, but we'll announce those later. So yeah, it's another opportunity for you to improve your material, and for us to build a better conference and for the participants to benefit from that. So that's another thing I wanted to mention, and then I think I'm pretty much done talking. So yeah, any questions about all of this, or stuff that, you know, concerns you may have, or fears, or yeah, anything you come up with, I'm happy to answer it.
The live coding stuff was mostly for the Foundations conference.
Yes. If you have something that would be on main conference, we'll, you know, that could also make sense. Of course, we're not going to refuse it because of that. But it's very much the idea that people see, you know, DDD at the level of code in practice, and stuff that I've, you know, for example, something I would like to see, and I think one of my colleagues was already thinking about a talk about that, or a live coding session. Often people think that modeling is just entities and value objects, right? And you have a domain model, but we would call that a very superficial model, right? A great model will show, or maybe, you know, have business rules will be visible in processes and behavior and events. All these things make up a better model. So a great session could be, here's some raw code, and now we're going to refactor this and make the rules more highlighted and visible and, you know, reusable and polymorphic, and build strategies and, you know, all this kind of thing. That stuff I would really like to see. When stuff is sort of spread across code, and see it as a more of a, you know, if something is actually a business process, can we see that in the code? How do the tests relate to the code? How does the ubiquitous language, how is that expressed in the code? That sort of stuff would be very valuable. Did you have a reason for that question, or?
I have a talk that I gave at like an internal conference at I work at DDDEU23, which is a part of Omega Point, Swedish company. So I gave a talk on message queues there.
Yeah.
So it's not live coding, of course. It's pretty hard to do, I guess, with illustrating messaging patterns with live coding, when it's kind of big picture, like you know, choreography versus orchestration and so forth. And
true, but I can imagine how that maybe, you know, there's aspects of that do appear in the code, and it doesn't have to be like 100% live coding, right? And maybe even coding is the wrong word. If you can show that sort of thing live, right? You could show maybe messages in different places happening, or setting that up and see how that impacts things, and then see how the code looks for that. I don't know, maybe there's opportunities there.
I do have some animation though, like messages flowing around, and you can see like where the messages go, but there's no, it's not really live. It's just pre-animated, I guess. And also, I'm not really sure if that talk would fit more into kind of event sourcing or the main conference.
Possibly more for event sourcing live, indeed. But I want to, like, the reason for this live coding constraint, it's supposed to be an enabling constraint, right? Something that pushes people to think differently about, how do I bring these ideas? How do I present that? Can I make that more engaging? Can I make that into something that's, almost like a performance, right? That engages people more, that gives them sort of a sense of this is real, right? This is not just somebody explaining something that may or may not be true, but it's something that actually, works. And if they can do it live on stage in, half an hour or 50 minutes, then surely we can spend a day on this and get it to work. That sort of vibe is what I'm going for. So I'm hoping to really, honor that constraint of live coding only, or some liveness aspect to it, at least. It can be jazz, like improvised, but it can be classical music as well, right? Where it's very well scripted and well prepared, and you know exactly what you're writing and saying at every point in time. That's all fine. It's as long as it feels, real.
I think that even good improvisation needs a lot of practice up front.
That's right? True. Yeah, that's very much true. Well, maybe another example is Romeo and I at an open space conference at Socrates, Germany, did a kata. It was improvised. Of course, it's a kata we've solved before, so it wasn't very difficult. But the improvisation was mostly that we were discussing at sort of a meta level how we reasoned about it and why we did certain things, and sort of, arguing and people seem to like that. So it could be, maybe the problem that you're solving isn't novel, but the way you discuss it is improvised. That could be possible. And I did something like that with Eric Evans as well once, during the lockdown. I think we did a Zoom session like that. Any other questions?
Yes. How can we understand if the session fits more to the main conference or more to the Foundations conference? So what's the aspect of that?
Yeah. If somebody who is well, maybe not entirely. If you've never heard of DDD, you're not coming to a conference called DDD Foundations, right? So it's people who have some exposure to it. Typically, maybe they've read the book, maybe they saw some videos, maybe they worked on a team that did it, or but they don't really feel like they grasp it yet. That sort of thing. And we want to help these people, you know, move forward, right? The sort of stuff that they might figure out over the course of a few years, but hopefully we can accelerate that by showing them some stuff. That's very much the idea. The main conference is, you know, assume people are already senior engineers or architects working in complex domains, or very much aspiring to do that and to have that role. We get people from, you know, banks and huge logistics companies and all kinds of things. So it's usually, you know, industry, right? So it's not typically game development or anything like that. But so people in industry working in complex domains who have spent enough time to understand the difficulties and the pains, who have dealt with legacy, you know, that's sort of the audience, and they know what DDD is typically, or we assume they do, right? Even if they don't, it's okay for the main conference. For me, ideally, everybody should leave with, okay, some of this stuff was over my head, but not so much that I can see, okay, I can get there. Maybe next year I come and this stuff I will now fully be able to understand it, and I'll see the next things. So we're trying to push it forward, right? We're trying to expand it. We're trying to, maybe there's novel ways of thinking about design. We've had Barry O'Reilly talk about what's it called again? Residuality theory, which is, you know, a novel way of looking at software architecture. That sort of thing is really valuable, right? We're pushing the limits. We're trying to see where, or we're trying at least, right? Trying to see where all this can go. There's stuff that was not on the radar of the DDD community that I think, because of content we put on at DD Europe, put it on the radar. Like we had Dave Snowden, we had Simon Wardley back in 2017 or 18, we had Dr. Mel Conway. This is stuff that not many people were talking about in the DD community, as far as I was aware, and that we sort of put on the agenda. So stuff like that is definitely welcome. Yeah, so pushing software design forward, that would be a good heuristic. But in the end, we decided, right, if you submit it as a main conference talk and we feel it would fit better at Foundations, we'll discuss that with you and figure out the best way.
Thank you.
Any other concerns?
Yeah, maybe as an add-on to a question from Marco. You said that there's going to be mostly live coding on the Foundations Day. And before that, you said there's also going to be workshops and katas and stuff like that. So are there also going to be kind of workshop format stuff on the Foundations Day where, for example, prepare a kata, or is that only like live coding in a sense that the presenter codes and the rest?
Yeah, it's the presenter. So
okay.
Yeah, most of it's mostly a one track conference. We might, you know, put on some extra sessions maybe, but it's really, you know, one track presenters showing stuff. Ideally, if it's like even shorter, if it's like 25 minutes, then we can show more IDs in the same time frame. So that would be good as well. So that would be really nice if it's like very focused. I'm going to show one ID with live coding, not too much fluff around it. Just, you know, here's how you can, that example I gave, extract business rules into strategy objects or something like that, right? And show that with some realistic code and realistic domain, but not showing like, first read these 3,000 lines of code before I can, that wouldn't work, of course. But so it's plenary sessions mostly, probably not much hands-on labs for foundations. If you're here thinking, I'm not sure I should submit something, like what's holding you back? What is, I'm just...
Yeah, so here, so one idea we would like to submit is actually our own itinerary, starting from basically using only the MVC pattern into whatever level we have. So it's basically starting from scratch and reaching whatever level we have. I think it's probably interesting for people who are also in the process of adopting it and seeing what kind of problems we run into and which one we just let or we're still not doing understanding. But of course, we do not have any high level. So how would that fit in the conference? Is that something that would work or not?
Yeah, so you're showing how it evolves, and is that
how we basically came to it, what kind of choice we made initially, like whatever tactics we decided to use and the other where we left, and then maybe things we decided that, well, we realized that it was not sufficient, and we decided to do in the future, for example. So really like return of experience from what we did.
Yeah. And there's two ways where this could go, right? If you can make this really visible, show some codes, highlight sort of the essential insights, keep it short, it would really fit foundations. If you feel like this, touches on sort of deep design, right? Where and I know it's hard, right? I know it's hard to talk about this stuff. This is why I'm pushing so hard for it, because it hardly exists elsewhere. Maybe as an example, right? I wrote some articles with Rebecca Wersbrock, where we're trying to show how the modeling and the design changes the whole thing and turns it inside out and that sort of stuff. So if it's something like that, it would fit better at the main conference. It would be more of a, here's some, like, if you're explaining a domain, showing sort of the complexity, maybe it's some domain that people don't really know or even, or don't expect to be so complex, right? Which is often the case.
That would be one.
And then showing you novel solutions or something like that. Yeah, that would be very much more like a main.
Yeah, this is workforce management. So when you have like a restaurant and you've got to manage the schedule for the waiters, so it's pretty simple by itself. You just have to fit the right people in the right slot. But it's actually including a lot of legal stuff and just the optimization of the company and stuff like that. So it turns pretty fast into something really complex.
Yeah, I imagine.
So I guess we have a good basis there. I think we're going to work on that that kind of idea. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? If the opposite is true, if you all feel like, okay, I know what to do, as soon as the meeting is over, I start submitting, then that's also fine, of course. Yeah, I just want to make it easier for people to submit, which I'm probably going to regret if we get 500 submissions this time. But,
I've got a question. So you mentioned some other sessions that are going to come up next week, potentially. How do we find out about those?
They are on the CFP page.
Okay.
So let me repost it in case you missed that.
I saw that, yeah. Thanks.
So it has the three, well, this one is today, of course, but then the next one is same time next Tuesday as well. And then we have one in, well, our morning on December 21st. And you can just sign up using the link.
Cool. Okay, great.
And
thanks.
we will record the video and publish it there as well. If you miss it, then you know where to find it.
Nice. I suppose on timelines then, I think the CFP closes at the end of February, so you'll be doing the kind of outreach and stuff between then and the conference, presumably, for the speakers.
Yeah, it's well, given the number of submissions, it can take a while before you get feedback.
Sure.
Well, not really feedback, but just an answer, basically. If there's stuff that stands out, or where we feel like, okay, we need more information, we can easily contact you and have a conversation. So
yeah, regarding Event Sourcing Live, if you have any questions or doubts, then don't be shy and don't hesitate to contact me. I'm open for discussion and giving some hints or giving you just the second brain.
yeah.
And I have a question actually. Yeah, the DDD topics are rather niche sometimes. So it's not always topics that you can submit to a lot of other conferences. Do we have a list of places where we can do tryouts or yeah, kind of a step-up stage towards DDD Europe?
Yeah, so we have good contacts with a lot of meetups. There's a virtual DDD meetup, which is still happening regularly. Some of the others have been, dormant since the pandemic, but some of them are restarting. So we can find ways to do it, right? It could be a physical meetup near you. We can put you in touch and you can run your session there as a tryout. It helps to mark it as a tryout, right? Call it or beta or whatever, and then people are more and maybe keep it small, and then people are more open to offering feedback and working through the kinks with you. And but it's yeah. Thanks for I forgot to remark that, but we really value that, right? That your session, especially if it's a hands-on lab and you don't have much experience doing that you maybe try it, or just with some colleagues, right? Over lunch can be a good way to try out some ideas. And again, we're happy to, we have the sessions with Dan and Mike. We can hook you up with other speakers to exchange ideas. So anything that makes this a great conference, we're going to try to support you.
How much do you usually send with the submission? Like,
how much do we want?
I mean, how much do you write? Like just a page, or do you want like the slides included or something?
Oh, well, the abstract itself is what gets published to the audience. So that's usually like a few paragraphs at most. But then in the private comments, sometimes people add videos where they've done this before, or other talks to show their skills. If you've written about it, that helps, like blog posts or a book. Yeah, and sort of explanations that maybe it doesn't have to be like pages and pages or a full present. It doesn't have to be ready, right? We know that people tweak their sessions up to the last minute. But the more we can have a sense of what is this going to be like, who is this for, that helps. And if we're intrigued by the idea, at the very least, we still have the opportunity to have a conversation with you and get that idea.
Yeah.
And even then, right, in that conversation, it doesn't have to be finished, but we want to feel of where this is going.
Yeah, because I have an existing talk, and I think I could kind of tweak it a little bit to make it more relevant. Like, it's about message queues, but I can kind of bring in some more like event sourcing and some more DDD concepts.
Yeah.
Also.
Okay. So anybody else? If not, then maybe you should end. Of course, you can always email us at contact@DDD Europe if you have more questions, or just put it in Sessionize in the CFP submission tool. Like for us, if that's our single source of truth, Sessionize. If it's not in there, it doesn't exist. So even if we had like sometimes I have conversations with people and they say, oh, I have this idea, or I mentioned this thing. If it's not in Sessionize, assume that I forgot about it, right? That's the only way to keep it manageable. Yeah, that's it. Maybe I'd like to have a quick sense of whether this session is valuable to you, if this past hour, if that was useful, so we know to do this again. I'll switch to gallery view. I see some thumbs up. Okay, I guess, yeah, excellent. If you have more feedback, of course, you're welcome to email that as well. And oh yeah, maybe one final thing. So the speaker compensation, we pay for your travel, we pay for a few hotel nights. You get access to the conference, of course. We have childcare should you need it, but we have limited space for that. So preferably only if you need it in order to speak. And what else? Yeah, for the pre-conference workshops, we offer a 50% profit share because, of course, they are bigger and require more work, and we sell separate tickets for that. And I think, and of course, our team, Anneke and Hilde, are very dedicated. I've always tried to make sure this is the conference that treats speakers the way I would like to be treated at other conferences. So we'll always put in a lot of effort to make it as comfortable and pleasant as possible for you, so you can focus on your session.
I've got a couple of questions actually off the back of that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One was around the, oh yeah, so can you submit multiple talks to like
Yes.
for multiple stages as well for
Yes.
multiple days and stuff?
Don't submit like dozens, but
No.
feel free to do a few.
Yeah, I wish. Okay, great, thanks. And the other one was on the tip of my tongue, and now I've forgotten about it. Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, is it better to submit stuff early and then like kind of approach you and say, have you seen? Like you said that things that go into the system are worth talking about, but do you discuss applications before the cutoff, or do you tend not to do that?
I might, but I'll contact people based on their submission. Okay. So submitting early is definitely better, right? Because we start deciding some stuff before the end of the deadline, and full is full. So Stain says there's a 4-session limit. We can increase that a bit, actually. All right, then if that's all, thank you very much for your time, and I'm looking forward to see your submissions and hopefully see you at the conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.